LS2 Thunder Carbon, FIM approved, World Championship technology, lightweight, aerodynamic, outrageous margins. Visit ls2usa.com.
Hauling it to the track, blasting over it, pushing the limits, aiming for the top. You're always in it to win it, and you want to stay cool. Super Cool Boil Guard reduces engine operating temperatures by up to 20 degrees. Super Cool Performance. Superior protection against cavitation, corrosion, and erosion. Don't get beat by the heat. Visit redlineoil.com for products designed and engineered to keep you cool.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to this week's episode of On the Throttle with Jacqui Van Ham and my buddy Josh, talking about all the new stuff going on out here in motorcycles and power sports. And this week we have a couple of really interesting stories for you. I mean, we always do, but this week is a little bit something extra. In my neck of the woods, we're talking about something old and something new. And no, I'm just not talking about Josh being old and me being here. We are talking about a couple of interesting new and old motorcycle companies and what's going on in their neck of the woods. Now, Josh, what do you have for today's stories?
So just to be scary about it, I'm going to talk about modeling. And then we are going to talk about how BRP got takeout.
What? I don't even know what's going on with your stories for today. If you also are just as if you are just as equally as confused, oh no, I definitely want to, and you need to stick around and stay tuned for those stories because Josh just threw the bait out there, and I'm waiting on pins and needles. Now you said something about modeling. I got to know more about it. Now, my first story for today, as promised, something old, and then we're going to talk about something new. Something old is going to be talking about a brand that has been around for a while now. They're relatively well known. They're very, very niche within a niche. This is the Russian motorcycle company Ural. Since the recent situation going on in Ukraine with Russia and this war situation that is happening right now, there has been sanctions. There's been all sorts of concern about businesses and industry and products and things and stuff happening in Ukraine and in Russia as well. And I have heard, because we are in motorcycling all the time over here, right? I have had a couple of folks bring up the Ural brand and what exactly was going to happen to these folks. And now the news has just come out this week that Ural is going to be relocating and leaving Russia. Now, this has probably an awful lot to do with the sanctions that are happening right now against Russia. However, they mentioned in a press release this past week that they've been considering the idea of relocation for a little while now, and this current situation just happened to force their hand. Let's go ahead and read a little bit more about this story. As a result of sanctions imposed on Russia due to the ongoing Russia and Ukrainian war, the IMZ Ural is setting up a new production facility in Kazakhstan, effectively abandoning its former home of Irbit in Russia. There were no options left, says the VP of Marketing and International Sales, from her home in Washington State here in the United States. It was a very cold November in 1941 when the factory had to move from Moscow to Irbit, and it was a chill February in 2022 when the factory had to move again. Sanctions have hit Ural particularly hard. The brand builds roughly 1,200 sidecar-equipped motorcycles each year, exporting 95% of them. Compounding production issues is the fact that 80% of the motorcycle's components are imported from outside Russia. The company's existence is utterly dependent on its participation in the global market. We spent 20 years inserting ourselves into the global economy. It was a very lengthy, difficult, and costly process of moving away from the Soviet-style factory in Irbit, which did everything in-house and didn't do it very well, to becoming more modern and purchasing the best components for our current products. Production is moving to northern Kazakhstan, some 600 kilometers, only about 370 miles southeast of the current or former, depending on how you look at it, factory that is in Irbit. This, I think, is really interesting. A handful of different things going on here. The one thing I wanted to point out is you're completely right. The Ural as a company, you and I, Josh, probably really only know about this because they've really inserted themselves through their marketing effort into the current global marketplace. It's the only reason why I've ever why I even see them right now. They still are clearly a very, very boutique brand. Their output is not super, super, super massive, but people that own these rigs are fans. This is very much a cult kind of bike. These are for people that love sidecars. It is truly a modern sidecar. There is a multi-wheel driven version of the Ural sidecar as well for people that do want to go play in the dirt, just like the photo on your screen right now. They're just a really fascinating product, and I was genuinely really curious about what was going to happen to them. The other kicker to this story is this whole idea of this global market, and we're seeing this with a lot of companies now where they're having to move bits and chunks of their production in order into the market into which they want to sell. Because if you are trying to make a thing and export to another country, you're really probably going to get hit with some pretty serious taxes. And now that makes that product unaffordable for the community that you're trying to sell it into. So we're seeing a lot of this going on globally. Harley Davidson has done it for years. Indian Motorcycles done it for years. Everybody's done it for years, where they move some production facilities to certain communities in order to be able to sell there and dodge a little bit of that tax bang that they would normally get. So this is kind of really interesting news, I think, for the folks at Ural. I think it's fascinating. And that being said, it is just kind of over the border. It's not too terrifically far. And they chose as their next headquarters Kazakhstan, which I think is also really kind of interesting. It's a very kind of unknown country, but friends of mine who do ride globally insist that it is a really, really neat part of the world to go and ride. So I mean, I think it's interesting, and kudos to them for deciding to just go ahead and make the jump and continue being a part of this global economy. What do you think about this story, Josh?
So there's two main points that I have on this one, and one of which is I love how the marketing manager put the marketing spin on it and said our current product, because if you want a 1944 BMW, you buy a Ural. If you want a brand new 1944 BMW.
Now that's not true. Even the modern Ural, even though you are correct in that the original layout is very, very World War II. Now I think they have LED lighting, Josh, and I think they have push buttons
and fuel injection.
So there.
And fuel injection. So there's some modern stuff to it. So this is an article, and it was one of those ones where I'm glad you picked it up, because I was reading a fair bit about this before. There's a guy that I know that actually has one. I've tooled around a parking lot in one of these. They are hilariously fun to ride. They're super simple, so they're just they're about as reliable as an anvil. What I found was interesting, though, is I did surf...
And they steer like one too, Josh.
Correct. They steer like a steamship. I surfed some of the Ural forums. And what they've found is even though they are very reliable, eventually stuff does wear out, and they cannot get parts for these bikes. So they are finding, and I mean, the fact that these bikes don't really break down either, you don't get many parts bikes. It's a boutique brand. So there's a lot of Urals right now that are very happy knowing that the border has been crossed and that they should be able to start getting parts soon. So that is another big move from them. They're not I know a lot of people see them as a Russian company. They're actually a global company. They've got offices everywhere, as you said. Marketing manager is in Washington State. So, I mean, I'm glad to see that they will be able to survive this and keep cranking out these crazy kooky bikes.
Yeah, and I mean, I do enjoy them. Sidecars in general are just smile machines. There's no way you can look at this photo and not smile. This just looks like a heck of a good time. Whether you're with a passenger, put your dogs in the sidecar, put your groceries in the sidecar, put your luggage in the sidecar, whatever you need to do, and get on down the road and go have that adventure. I'm here for it. I'm a sidecar nut. I think that this just looks like a heck of a good time. And you're right. This was good news, and this is why I wanted to talk about this on today's show. Now, what do you got going on for your first story for today?
So I mentioned modeling. To everyone's disappointment, it's not going to be me. So that being said, Husqvarna has stepped things up, and now it's only for the FCR 450, but this is a 3D rendering that they now have on their website. So one of the really cool things about this is when you go to their site, you can spin this around, you can flip it over, you can look at pretty much whatever angle you want to. You can zoom in on stuff, you can zoom out. I mean, it's almost, you have complete camera control over the room, essentially. What makes this kind of interesting, and on top of that, is it's powered by the Unreal graphics engine, which is what powers probably 80% of the video games out there right now that have a lot of action to them. What's interesting about this and why they did this with this model. Now, last week I talked about beta. Make sure you go watch that one if you haven't already. How they're going to have some options that you're going to be able to get as factory options. And it used to be with a car, you could spec out this, that, and the other. Then you could get packages with your car. Husqvarna has taken, going from the dealership being like, this is the bike that you're going to buy, and when you get home, you're going to have 10,000 boxes of original parts that have never been used because you instantly threw a bunch of stuff on. You can now order some of that through the factory. So like if you look at this one here, this has an FMF slip-on it. It's also got the FMF exhaust on it. The wheels I changed to a blue hub. The sprocket on it is now a blue sprocket and chain. You can change out the bodywork on this. You can also change to a high-end anodized triple tree. They have a ton of options. There's also 3 separate seat options that you can get, and you can even option the bike to come in the crate with the stand that you see in the picture and the cool Husqvarna rug that you see here. Now, I decided that I was going to maybe go a little bit nuts. I priced it out, adding everything that I wanted to, at $17,151.87, at which point I passed out and recovered sometime later. Nonetheless, I do think it's very cool that they're able to do this. The fact that you can order it exactly how you want it now from the factory, I think is really cool. I'm interested to see if this is going to be how, I know with BMW, you can spec certain things, but it's typically the bike shows up and they're pulling a couple of parts off the shelf and swapping it out before you take delivery. I wonder if Husqvarna is going to do this the same way or not. And so that was kind of an interesting bit with that. One other thing that I noticed is they want your email address in order for you to do this. When you did that, when you verified it, it goes to the KTM site and then comes back. So I'm wondering when this takes over Husqvarna, KTM, when it goes through their whole ecosystem and we can now start speccing bikes. I'm excited for it. What accessories are you going to add, Jacqui?
Well, first of all, if you're buying a $17,000 dirt bike, your last name better be Stewart or Carmichael. That's all I gotta say about that, because that is crazy. That bike is gorgeous, though, and just the graphic that you've got on the screen right now, that is beautiful 3D rendering. Whether you're a computer dork or not, that is so lifelike and incredible. I am here for it. I love it. I love seeing the use of technology in such a smart and realistic and applicable way. Speaking of being applicable, I also love this idea of being able to spec out bikes. OEMs have been on the struggle bus about this topic for forever, because the pendulum swing was like, stock bikes, and then a couple of little aftermarket parts showed up, and then about 30 some odd years ago, a bunch of aftermarket parts kind of showed up, but then they were losing sales of new bikes because people were buying older bikes and then modding them out because that way they could afford to do it. So anyway, I've just heard all sides of this conversation, all sides of this coin, but the long and short of it is if it makes the consumer happier and it's easier to get them to open their wallet to something, the answer is yes. Just do it. Just do it. Do the thing. Let them put the stickers and the stuff on it that they want. But in a realistic way, is that really easy to do from factory? No. I understand that this has its challenges and that there are going to be some growing pains and hiccups. And you're right. This bike very well might be showing up to the dealership stock. Then they have to wait for the parts to come behind it and put it on the bike. We don't know. That's the kicker here, is nobody knows how the delivery of this is going to be. In an ideal world, what Jacqui Van Ham, would love to see is a little bit more of a direct manufacturer to consumer sales through. where they just show up at the dealership and the bike is totally ready. But then, the dealership misses out on their opportunity to sell stuff. And how are they going to split that? And anyway, there's a lot of conversations that need to have happened in order for that to become the reality of the purchasing of things. But I'm already seeing it happen in automotive. And if that's how it works in automotive land with these companies like Carvana and all these other services where you can literally order a car like a pizza and it gets brought to your house, to me, it says motorcycling shouldn't be too far behind it. Now, does it mean that it is going to be too far behind it? I mean, probably yes. But it would be cool if it could be just that easy. If I could go ahead and order a pizza with a side of super awesome Husqvarna, I'd be down for it. I think it's great. I think it's a super cool thing, and I think it's it's the future, it's the now, and it's what we need to be doing. So I am here for it. Speaking of the future and the now, however, my second story for today, as promised, I was talking about something old and something new. And my something new for today's story is a company that just launched. This just started making its way around the internet a little bit this past week. A friend of mine either visited these folks or knows these folks, or I don't know exactly how it came on my radar, but this image showed up on one of my social media feeds this past week, and I was like, ooh, this is interesting. If you're a regular watcher of the show, I and Josh are a bit of e-bike dorks. We do enjoy our e-bikes over here, and I always love to talk about some of the new companies. But what really caught my eye is not only kind of the clever styling of this bike, because I think it is really sharp in a very, very crispy modern way. And I do like the chunky wheels on it, chunky tires on it. This is really interesting to me the more that you dig into it, and some of the specs for this bike are what really, really set it apart from the 500 million other e-bikes that are going on right now. So let's go ahead and take a look at their press release that just happened within the past week or so. The heart of an EV, the soul of moto. The Ryvid Anthem is a completely fresh take on two-wheeled EV mobility. Proprietary technology includes a bespoke, lightweight stainless steel chassis, ergo easy adjustable ride height. That's right. Look at this on your screen right now. You can adjust that seat from 30 to 34 inches. This has been the Achilles heel of a lot of motorcycles, including the EV bikes out here. Because they're either too tall or they're too short, and this adjustability is the first time I've seen this on an e-bike, I think, other than perhaps the Damon maybe had some adjustability on it, but that bike is like 30 some odd $1,000. Anyway, this is 30 to 34 inch seat height, which I am here for as a 5'2" female. I think that is excellent. Anyway, it's called the Ergo Easy Adjustable Ride Height, a removable battery pack for easy charging. The Anthem's groundbreaking tech is cloaked beneath minimal, sleek bodywork, a premium product, and an accessible price point. It is just shy of $8,000. What's showing on your screen right now, why I want to talk about this, is because this hub, which is how this bike is driven, you can swap this final drive out. This was something I also have not seen. This is a swappable final drive. So right now it is showing a slightly larger final drive. So this is great for like low end torque and really grunty tree climbing types of riding. But if you need that wheel to spin more and faster, which would be up in your higher gears, then you can go ahead and put a smaller final drive on it. And it is super easy to swap. And I think that is really, really incredible. Just a handful of cool pieces of tech that are in this bike. The easily removable battery can be quick swapped for instant fill-ups or brought indoors for ultimate charging flexibility. This is another conversation Josh and I've had on the show before about swappable batteries. Not everybody has a garage, man. Not everybody has a place to safely park and charge their thing and their whiz-bang and their gadget. Sometimes you got to bring that stuff upstairs to your apartment. The nice swappable battery in this makes that all happen in a much easier way. I think this is just really, really excellent. It's got a TFT dash on it, all sorts of beautiful stuff. 75-mile range in eco mode, 50-mile range in sport mode. Top speed is over 75 miles per hour. Boom, shakalaka. I love this bike. I think this is super cool. I love e-bikes anyway. I'm a dork, but the adjustability on this is what really, really caught my eye. Josh, what do you think about this cool new bike?
So as I looked at the design of it, the two things is, so first off, the adjustability is a great thing. And it's not just so people can even touch the ground. It's the other thing is like, I mean, you're going to be comfortable on a bike in a different bike than I am. It's not like I'm the Jolly Green Giant, but in the same sense, I mean, I'm going to like the foot pegs a little bit further away than you are. Just, I mean, we have different inseams. Same thing for the handlebar reach, everything like that. So that adjustability is removing that barrier of entry for people. You nailed it with the battery being able to come in the house. The other thing that I looked at when we look at the next slide, that was the bare frame that had the motor there. The motor's mounted to the swing arm here. So when I see stuff like that, so now that takes belt adjustment much more out of the equation of something that someone has to worry about. I can see it's still there, but obviously when you don't have to worry about swing arm travel between that and the motor, you've eliminated more maintenance, more things, other things that people are going to have to look at. When I look at this is as simple as it gets. There's a pivot for the swing arm, there's a belt, there's bearings for the wheels, there's forks, there's the head bearings, and it's done. That's it.
I think it's so brilliant in its simplicity.
Exactly.
And I think this is what I really, really like about it. I love that it's got a cool form. It looks cool, but it is so function. I think that's incredible. And at sub $8,000, I think this is a slam dunk. Oh, this is from Ural. That's the wrong slide. But I think this is just a complete slam dunk. I think it looks great. These are built, quote unquote, in LA. I didn't really get too deep into where all the components come from. They might be assembled in Los Angeles, but they're a California-based company. I think they're a neat thing. They are headed towards launch. You can go to their website. I think they're about 20 days out from launch. I'm sure they're taking deposits on these bad boys over on their website. Yeah, I just think it's really excellent, and I just had to talk about it on today's show because that just really impressed me. Those are some features I have not seen on e-bikes at this price tag previously. So I love the direction that they're headed, and I just wanted to give them a little bit of love today. All right, what's your second story for today, Josh?
I mentioned takeout. BRP went for takeout. So if I said Great Wall Motor, you're going to be like, is that dry cleaning or is that food?
There's a Chinese restaurant in my town called Great Wall.
Right, exactly. I think there's one in every town. I don't even care if your town doesn't have a traffic light, only has stop signs. There is a Great Wall restaurant there. Nonetheless, Great Wall Motor Austria is the full name of the company. BRP, we all know BRP is the ginormous company that takes care of Sea-Doo, Can-Am, and others, acquired them. So with that, they say that employees will stay on, that their main engineering team is 53 employees. So where this gets a little interesting. So back in March, Can-Am announced that for its 50th anniversary, it will be having some electric models released for 2024. Now, we had talked about this before, Jacqui, that, BRP picked up some of the remnants of Alta and stuff like that. So there's technology. So BRP also kind of announced, if I remember right, it was 2019. There was some drawings and there was a release of, hey, here's this futuristic bike that we're going to have coming up.
Yep.
And look great, look awesome. So now and that's set for 2024. Is when that's coming out, which isn't too far off. Mine, it's digital, but it still works. I can't read the hands. I need the numbers. So to me, there's a number of things that I see with this that are interesting. So this, obviously it's a smaller firm and they specialize in motor and inverter hardware and software development. So inverter is is a key part to these things. The motor is big, but the inverter is how the power comes out of the battery and how the power goes in the battery and how they're able to handle that. And the software that goes along with that. So, us all coming from an internal combustion range, so to say, we all think the motor's everything. It is with electrics, but the electrons are controlled by the inverter. So what I kind of wonder with this is if BRP is just buying this company, had they been working with them and suddenly say, you know what, we have sent you guys a ton of money. Would it just be cheaper to buy you? I'm wondering if they're saying that. Like I said, 2024 is not far away. Where do you think they're at on their timeline, Jacqui?
Well, I know that again they teased out that bike. It was pre-COVID, so everything slid off the table. For two solid years. So I am not totally surprised that I have not heard anything else about an e-bike from them or from Can-Am or from somebody. But I think it's fascinating that they're revisiting this conversation. I do see an awful lot of companies that are of that size, a la Polaris, where they see somebody who's doing something better than they can figure it out in-house, and they just buy them and they make them become part of the house because it's just cheaper and easier than trying to set up their own department. Honestly, it's super common for these big, massive companies to go ahead and just snap up these little guys. They've already proven that is kind of their legacy, again, with the purchase of the intellectual property that was coming from Alta via Harley Davidson that kind of got stuffed on the shelf. And anyway, they went and scooped that up a couple years ago. And then, as you'd already mentioned, they teased out an actual functioning e-bike. They showed them riding it at one of their national sales or international sales meetings. I remember seeing it. I know I did not hallucinate. I remember seeing it back in like 2019, 2020-ish. It must have been that moment. So I'm really curious to see where they're headed and what's going on. Goodness knows they are a large enough company. They have enough money to invest and do their research and development. So I'm here for whatever they want to release. And I believe they just released, and I think you talked about a couple weeks back, that they are doing an electric ski-doo. Do I have that right? Aren't they doing electric watercraft?
There's electric watercraft in the process, and there's electric snowmobiles in process too. So, and I think there with the snowmobiles, I know there's actually one other company that's having pretty good success with that. I forget the name right off the top of my head. So there's a little bit of catch up. What I find interesting with this is, especially with the years since COVID that so many of these manufacturers have had, they got to reinvest. Their books look really good. They're cash heavy right now. So let's go buy some companies that are going to help us for the future, which I think is a great move. And especially seeing where this is going to go, I think it's a good move. But it's never a good move until it finally puts something out the door. And I'm hoping that they're not going to do what another maybe British company has done with a few bikes for us. No names.
The shade of it all, Josh. Good for you, friend. So thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Josh and I do like to pick on some companies sometimes and talk a little industry. I mean, that's what we do here. That's the whole point of the show. We try to stay on top of all the breaking news going on in motorcycle land, good, bad, or otherwise. We're going to bring it to you every single week. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of On the Throttle. As always, you can watch all of our past episodes, which they are all wonderful, and you should be watching them over on YouTube or on the Motorcycle Powersports News Facebook page. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next week.